Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, across America and around the world. You are listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
And I'm Carolyn Nelson.
Folks, I've been told throughout the years that no one would listen to me, that I'm just a voice shouting in the wilderness, and we've heard that before, haven't we? I've been told that if I opened my mouth, I would be killed. Well, I've been opening my mouth for many years, and I have been attacked several times and severely injured, but I'm still here, and I'm still doing it. I was told that if I went somewhere to speak, nobody would show up. Yet, when I go to places like Salt Lake City, I can fill the Salt Dome. And do. People are beginning to wake up, but not even near the lowest numbers that we need to succeed in our endeavor. They told me that I could never get on the air on radio anywhere. And then if I did, I'd be tossed off in 5 seconds flat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've been on the air since May the 4th, 1992, and we intend to stay on the air until somebody does throw us off. Or they come and take me away, or they put me in the grave, whichever comes first, or we win this battle. That's what I would really like to do, leave a better world for those who follow after us. I've been told that if I talk to my radio audience like I do, that I wouldn't have a radio audience, yet the people who know now tell me that I have the largest shortwave radio audience in the world. And not only do I broadcast 1 hour a night, I now broadcast 2 hours a night. In this time slot, which is 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then later in the evening at 9 p.m. Pacific, 10 Mountain, 11 Central, and midnight Eastern Standard Time. I'd like to read a fax to you from one of the sheeple. He says, W. Cooper, I would normally communicate my opinion by voice, but in your case you are impossible to rationally communicate with. Here's a message for you, mister. The overall gist of your radio programs are informative and worthwhile. Surprise. What is bloody sickening is your big ego and your method of talking down to people. Tell me, Mr. Cooper, when exactly did you stop being a sheeple? Were you born knowing how this insane world works? You know and I can't say the word, folks, but it rhymes with bucking as in the rodeo. You know the bucking truth, and I know the truth. Was the truth real easy to find? No, it wasn't. It is a conspiracy of all conspiracies. So a few years ago, you learned the truth and stopped being a fathead. Stopped treating others like, and I can't say that word either, folks, but it rhymes with bit, as in drill bit. Educate, not insult. You will get a lot farther. Are you sure you're not running for Antichrist? You're sounding like one. Get civil. Signed G. Drysdale. Folks, I will get civil, and I will stop telling you the truth about yourselves when you shed that coat of wool and stand up on your 2 feet like a man and woman. When you begin to help actively take this country back. When you stop buying the bullshit of the New World Order and the secret societies. When you stop believing blindly what you're told. When you stop buying. You see, I've tried it the nice way. I've tried being real nice to people. I tried telling them that they're the greatest people on the face of this earth. I tried telling them that they're the most well-educated, most intelligent group of people on this earth, and they continually prove me wrong. You see, I am beginning to discover that when the Illuminati call you animals, that for the most part, it's true. Most people have never had an original thought in their life. Don't even know how to do it. People call me every day, asking me the most stupid questions I've ever heard in my entire life. Questions that if they just sat down and thought for 1 second, they could answer themselves. No, folks. I'm going to tell the truth on the hour of the time. I'm going to tell the truth always. And the truth is, most people are sheeple, not people at all. The reason we're losing our great nation is because of those sheeple. Because if people really could use their intelligence, if they really did stand up on their own 2 feet, and if they really were not sheeple, we would never be in this condition to begin with. And I have never shirked my portion of the blame. I have said on many of these programs that for most of my life I was just as stupid and ignorant and apathetic as everyone else. But I woke up. And I'm going to demand that you wake up. And until you do, I'm going to call you exactly what you are, and that's sheeple. And only the sheeple will be insulted by it. This man's, Mr. Drysdale, your contention that you know what's going on is total crap. If you knew what was going on, you would not be insulted by my attempts to wake up those stupid people out there who are allowing freedom to slip out of their grasp because of their apathy, their ignorance, and their stupidity. If I walk down the street and someone yells, "Hey, stupid," I don't turn around because I know they're not talking to me, and it does not make me angry. Get ready, folks. We've got a good show tonight. We're bringing someone back that you haven't heard for or from in a while, and you need to hear from her again. Get ready, folks. Don't move from your seats, because right now, with no further hesitation, we bring you Waco, Part 46. Good evening, Linda Thompson. Welcome back to the Hour of the Time.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? That's the question.
Well, I'm alive and well and kicking and being a major boil on the butt of these people that are trying to take our government away from us, and I hope to continue to be for some time to come.
Good for you. And you're just one lonely, helpless person, aren't you?
Well, actually, not anymore. It's been really nice. In terms of response, I've heard from so many people, and so many people have taken the original Waco tape, showed it in their communities, and people really are waking up around the country. That's been the most gratifying part of this, the whole thing. I was so happy to see that occur. I don't feel like I'm alone anymore. I know I'm not, and it's people like you that are making the difference.
Well, thank you, Linda. But I'm just one lonely, helpless person, too, and so is Carolyn Nelson.
Here I am, too. Hi, Linda. Welcome back. And I guess you've gone from coast to coast, north and south.
Yes, but that's all been part of the people that have just taken the bull by the horns and run with it. It's been amazing to me. People would get the tape, show it on public access TV. They'd show it to their churches. They'd show it to their gun clubs. They'd show it to their families. You know, and then they'd send it to their congressman. I haven't been on any radio shows in Georgia at all, and a congressman from Georgia was on C-SPAN saying, "Please don't send me another copy of the tape." The governor of Texas was asked by Terry Liberty Parker, who has been just an amazing person working in this, on radio one day, had she seen the Waco tape, and the governor of Texas replied, "In my sleep. In my sleep." So we know Department of Justice got asked about the tape twice during their final so-called report of their investigation into Waco, and could not explain the fire at the end of the tank, didn't try to. They said that it appeared to be flames, and their experts didn't know what it was.
Now, if the United States government says that, who are these people who call themselves patriots who have set out on one course and one course only, and that's to try to discredit you and to discredit your work and to try to get people not to look at that tape anymore? Who are these people?
Every single one of them so far that has done that has been connected to Bo Gritz.
You mean Bobo is in this, mixed up in this?
Absolutely. He began the attack simultaneously with Tom Donahue and Ron Engelman, and they were relying on a tape that before it was even out, that was produced by a guy named McNulty, who's an insurance salesman but claims to be a professional investigator.
Yeah, and we checked that out this afternoon after I talked to you, and he is indeed an insurance broker and is not a professional investigator, so he has lied on that point. Is that correct?
Well, that's one of the several points he's lied on, actually. He's apparently got an article coming out in Soldier of Fortune in the February issue, and that's going to be real interesting because the points that he's making, he's put out a videotape is what he's done, and the purpose of, he called me back in June and said he was going to prove that the flame-throwing tank that was seen in my first tape was not a flame-throwing tank. Now, he also said he had footage showing that there was a flame-throwing tank in another part of the footage that he had at a different place in the building. And I said, well, that's really dumb. Why would you try to prove mine wasn't real, but yours was real? And it didn't make sense to me. And I just pretty much blew him off as a nut and didn't pay any attention to him. And it took him months because he's just now come out with this footage. Well, what he's done is he's got a piece of footage that shows the tank backing up, and then it continues to back up on his tape, and it appears that what's on the front of the tank is debris. Well, in all the footage that we've had, I have never found a continuous piece of tape that shows the tank continuing to back up. I did find a piece of tape that shows a tank backing up with debris on it, but even that piece, and it matches the footage in McNulty's tape, but in even that tank, the debris is on fire, and that's what he cut off.
And it's smoking, isn't it?
It's smoking.
And also, we've examined the tape, and none of the debris that's on the front of the tank has a reflective surface whatsoever. And I might add that none of those building materials would be reflective enough to reflect sunlight or any kind of light and make that kind of a washout on a videotape.
There's no insulation in the building, which you'll remember Bo Gritz originally claimed until he found that there was no insulation in the building. And debris does fall down. You can see the debris fall in my tape, but you see the fire get crushed by the debris. That's what pushes the fire out and makes that little whipping tail. I mean, nothing looks like fire except fire. You can't imitate it. Glare doesn't imitate it. Nothing imitates fire. Fire is fire. A Boy Scout can look at this tape and tell you what you're seeing. On top of that, though, we have footage of the flame-throwing tanks, plural, not just one tank. There was more than one tank out there, we found out. And we've got pictures of it shooting flame in other parts of the building, and we now have the footage that proves where the fire started, and it's continuous footage. There's no interruptions, no cuts. It began in the back of the house, right where the tank went in my first tape. That back wall was set on fire and began smoking 10 minutes or more before the front window that everybody saw on TV begins to smoke and starts on fire. And the camera caught the smoke. There's also another tank back there. Smoke is coming out from all around the front of this tank, and all of a sudden you see billows of smoke. The camera backs away, and a few minutes later the window starts on fire. There's no break in it. You can absolutely see it. There can be no doubt where the fire really started. And there are 3 points of origin. One is right there in the back of the house. One is on the second story to the left of the front door. And the other is in the second story to the right of the front door. And that's the one everybody saw on TV. McNulty's tape also, the probably the most bogus part of the tape,
well, let's start from the beginning. A lot of the listeners don't even know what you're talking about. He has a tape that he is not releasing to the public. In fact, I have a document that I obtained which states that the tape is only released to the press. And he sent out this press release on a letterhead of something called the California Organization for Public Safety, and it has like a Capitol building on the letterhead, which makes people think that it comes actually from the state of California. And the acronym is COPS, which sounds official. And in fact, this is a total bogus organization, isn't it?
Well, if you call, I found out the phone number they have listed begins with area code 909. That's a pay number. If you call there, you're going to be billed, so much a minute just for calling them.
Uh-huh.
And secondly, if you call information for the number for this group, they don't have a listing, not even with information. So they can't have, if they exist at all, they can't have been around very long. So that's lie number 2.
Well, this afternoon I made 2 phone calls. One was to the state of California Capitol and Capitol building. I talked to them. There is no such agency in California. They know of no citizen agency by that name. And I also called the long-distance operator for that address and that number and attempted to obtain a listing. And there is no listing. Also, the manner in which this tape was distributed, not allowing the public to see it, and I haven't been able to get my hands on a copy of it to look at it either. But people that I know have looked at it, including you, claim that this tape has been doctored. Is that correct?
Yes, and I couldn't get a copy from them. I got a copy through someone who is in the media that got the copy to me because I had asked for a copy. And this was particularly peculiar because a guy that's been going on radio programs, this has been set up really very cleverly. McNulty produced the tape, and he puts out these press releases that look official for this bogus business that he has, claims he's an investigator when he's an insurance salesman, and then he has a second fellow who is fairly well established as a writer on Second Amendment issues, named Neil Schulman, go out and promote his tape, tout it to the media as the be-all, end-all solution to what happened in Waco, and at the same time attempt to discredit me. That makes it look even more authentic because here's somebody else who's an expert promoting the tape on his behalf. McNulty himself doesn't promote the tape.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of odd because Schulman had called me too.
There's nothing odd about it, Linda. This is a classic operation to try to shut you up and discredit you just 10 days before the trials of the Branch Davidians begin in San Antonio.
Linda, that's what I wondered also, is why they waited until about the 4th month of your travels around the country to suddenly break this.
I thought it was kind of interesting, too. There was actually the attack started the day the Justice Department report came out, and it was almost like the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing because the Justice Department came out and publicly said that their experts would not say that that wasn't flame coming out of that tank. And they, that's really pretty good. I was amazed that they didn't get anyone to lie for them and say that it wasn't flames. So when the government won't even go to the point of claiming that it wasn't flames, it makes no sense to me for some group that claims to be a patriot organization to go out of their way to do it.
I've told you many times, Linda, you're not listening to me. There are no patriot organizations.
Well, these guys claim to be, so I guess that's how you can tell.
That's what they claim to be, but there are no patriot organizations. The people who are bringing about the New World Order practice the Hegelian dialectic of political conflict resolution. They create the problem. They create the opposing sides which will battle over a solution to this problem, and the solution is always what they wanted to get in the first place, but as it turns out, the people always think it was by accident or it was their idea, and it always seems or appears to solve a problem for the public, but it never does. It always results in more control of the public and less freedoms for the individual.
Well, that's obviously the case, particularly in the gun control issue, but back to this silly tape. In any event, I'm able to identify the stations that are, the government lackeys by who grabbed this up and started touting it. And that was what occurred right about the time the Justice Department report came out, which was back in October. Immediately after that, Tom Donahue had me on his program, And what he kept trying to do was get me to talk about vote rights, and I told him I wouldn't. I wanted to talk about the tape. And he then began to attack me on his program, along with Ron Engelman. Now, you remember Ron Engelman was the broadcaster in Waco, or in Texas, who got a job in a radio station right before Waco happened.
Just immediately before, in fact.
Exactly.
And as soon as it was over, he left.
Uh-huh. And that occurred to several media people down there. In fact, there was one station that had 26 employees that were hired before Waco and left after Waco. The other day, I happened to be calling Parkland Hospital and talked to a guy who said he was the administrator on call and that his name was Rick Stevens, which sounded like a bogus name. I was calling to check some information on the burn patients that were treated from Waco. And he asked me who I was, and I explained about the tape, and I explained why I was investigating the issue of the burns that people had suffered. And as I got into the detail about the flame-throwing tank and stuff, he interrupted me and he said, "You mean you think we set the fire?" Now, that really threw me off because I said...
He was supposed to be an employee of Parkland Hospital.
That's right. And I said, "What do you mean we?" I said, "We." He said, "ATF." I said, "Why would you use the word we?" And he said, "Well, you take it however you want to take it. It was just a figure of speech. I didn't mean it to be offensive." I said, "I'm not offended. I'm stunned. Why would you include yourself in a group of people that are government employees? Why would you say we? Are you a government employee?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Are you an agent? Are you any kind of agent?" He said, "No." And then I asked him, was he employed by ATF, and he denied that too. But it was really peculiar, and I'll tell you, it absolutely looks like this whole thing was a set-up deal from the very beginning. They had broadcasters in place. In fact, while I was in Waco, one of the broadcasters for NBC was a guy I went to law school with. Now, tell me why somebody that's going to be an announcer for a TV show needs to go to law school.
Well, they don't, but they have to go to law school to be an FBI agent.
That's right.
They were in control of everything down there. During the Waco siege, when I arrived down there, I called the Waco Police Department in order to clear my press credentials, and I didn't get anybody at the Waco Police Department. In fact, when they answered the phone at the Waco Police Department, Sharon Wheeler was the person who answered the phone, and you didn't get past her unless you had some other kind of legitimate business that had nothing to do with the Branch Davidians.
Well, Sharon Wheeler is an ATF public relations spokesman.
That's absolutely correct.
And another interesting thing is when the Branch Davidians dialed 911 that day, they got Lieutenant Lynch at the Waco Police Department. Now, Lieutenant Lynch works for the Sheriff's Department. He doesn't work for the Waco Police Department. Shouldn't have been there. Why was he answering the phone? Who sent him over there to begin with? Well,
they had the whole thing covered in all areas from beginning to end. There is no doubt about it that this was a large, huge operation that involved elements of multinational law enforcement units, military, and even the British SAS, which provided overflights of reconnaissance aircraft and certain infrared heat-seeking devices so that they could identify where these people were inside those buildings.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the tape that we're working on right now, which for want of a better name, we'll call it Waco 2, we have found footage of military in uniforms on the tanks as the fire is burning at Waco, and they are not U.S. military uniforms. How's that for proof?
Well, it's we've got tons of proof. That's just one more little stick put on the fire, so to speak.
No, there's not any blue beanies, but there are uniforms that are not U.S. military uniforms, and they are on the tanks. They were driving the tanks. They were in the tanks. And I want somebody to answer that question. Who were these people? Why were they here? Why were they driving tanks on American soil to begin with, and why were they killing women and children?
Against American citizens. There was also a United States Army psychological warfare unit on site manned by military personnel, and that's where all the loudspeaker music came from, and the recordings of rabbits being slaughtered.
Drills. They had every nasty sound you can think of on those tapes.
Mm-hmm.
I have gotten, some congressmen have written to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and different military and asked specific questions. They asked me to write the questions, and they submitted them to the military for answers. And it's really funny because depending on who got the questions, the answers are different every time.
Sure.
So they're lying through their teeth because one guy says there's only 5 tanks out there, another one says there were 12. We can count at least that many in the footage that we have. This type of thing, they deny that the active military had anything to do with this other than advisory. When you can see we've got a picture of a tactical Jeep with a machine gun mounted on the back and a guy standing on the back of the Jeep manning that machine gun, driving it through Waco, through the Mount Carmel property. And
machine guns are not issued to law enforcement agencies.
Absolutely not. And this is a big one. This is a big
I should
caliber machine gun.
Yeah, I should rephrase that. The type that would be mounted on a stanchion on a Jeep is not normally issued to law enforcement agencies.
We have pictures of the helicopters with military hanging out of the helicopters with rifles pointed down. There is a neighbor, Ron Cook of the Branch Davidians, who says that he videotaped people being shot as they ran out the back of the house and that his videotape was stolen. But that even if that is the case, we've got pictures of the sniper nest set up in the back of the house in a barn. They sandbagged this barn inside just all the way up the walls and then made sniper holes so they could shoot out these holes. And they've even marked the paint like you'd notch a gun.
Okay, we got to interrupt you, Linda, and take a short break here. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back. Well, Linda, what's next?
Well, that sniper's nest, I wanted to mention something I thought was truly just absolutely disgusting. The sniper's nest that the FBI set up behind the Branch Davidians' house that was out there the day of the fire. On the wall, they were marking the people that they killed like you'd notch a gun handle. There were marks on the wall with paint, just little notches, and drawn like you draw 5 sticks up and one across, and so many on down. And that right there should be plenty of evidence that things were not as we were being told. The entire hostage rescue team of the FBI, the same guys that were up in Idaho, and I did verify this, all 50 of the hostage rescue team members were in Idaho at Randy Weaver's house. The same guys were in Waco. And the FBI wasn't there on the 2nd or 3rd or 4th day like they told us. They were there the first day. They were there from the beginning of this thing. And these are the people that murdered everyone in that place and have yet to answer for it. They've yet to answer for murdering Vicki Weaver.
They're not the only ones, Linda. All of the people in the United States of America, all of the sheeple have to answer for this too. Because they didn't have to wait until those things happened to know that something was wrong. On the very first day, when a spokesperson for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms gave a press conference and stated that they were there and had made a raid with guns drawn firing on a church in Waco, Texas, because they had heard from a foreign source through the State Department that the members of the church were going to commit suicide. Every single person in this country should have stood up and said, "You are a liar." But they didn't do it because they are sheeple. They are ignorant, apathetic, and stupid, and unless they stop being that way, you're going to see many more Wacos in the coming months and years.
Well, let's talk ignorant, apathetic, and stupid about what's going on right this minute. The trial for the surviving Branch Davidians, 12 of them, they're charged with conspiracy to commit murder and murder of federal agents. is going on beginning January the 10th in San Antonio.
Now, they didn't attack any federal agents, did they?
No, they did not. And right now we've got plenty of evidence of that. In fact...
Well, let's make sure the sheeple understand this. What is the charge again, Linda?
They're charged with conspiracy to commit murder and murder of federal agents.
Conspiracy means they planned the federal agents' raid on them so that they could kill the federal agents. Is that correct?
Right. It means that they conspired to kill these agents ahead of time. Now, that would mean that they had to know that they were coming and lay a trap and so forth and so on. That's why we've been hearing so much hoopla. You know, they've been trying to keep this alive in the media by feeding stories periodically. And one of the stories we all heard about was the mailman was tipped off by a reporter so that the ATF lost the advantage of surprise, that there was no surprise. And when they fired Stephen Higgins and they fired the other couple of ATF agents that had been in charge of the raid, they said it was because they knew the element of surprise had been lost and they should have abandoned the plan. Well, that whole thing is a lie. Every bit of that is a lie because there's an interview with Musa Fari, he's a reporter, who says that on Saturday, everybody at the Waco Tribune-Herald knew about the raid. They'd already been told. They'd been called.
Not only that, but the ATF suited up in a parking lot downtown in full view of the entire citizenry.
Well, I've got an AP release from at the time of the original raid where Sharon Wheeler called the media beforehand. She was told to call them beforehand and tell them to be out there.
Sure.
There was no question of an element of surprise. There never was intended to be an element of surprise.
But all of that is moot anyway, Linda, simply because David Koresh had a long habit and record of interacting honestly and without violence with police officers and sheriff's deputies and the sheriff himself. Whenever they wanted to talk to David Koresh, all they had to do was call him up and say, come down to the office, and he would do that. So
it invited the ATF to come out, and they didn't do it.
That's correct. So what they should have done is gone up to the door and knocked and served whatever warrant they had. They had no reason whatsoever to do what they did, unless they had the intention of killing these people to begin with.
Well, I believe they did intend to kill them. And that's some of the things that's covered in the original tape. It shows you how the fourth agent that went up on the roof was firing into the room and threw a grenade in there. Now, we found better footage, and we're putting this in Waco, too, where you can distinctly hear the grenade after it's thrown in. This is one of the things they cut out when the news media showed the footage of the original raid. They edited out some very important sounds, and I had to get it from the copies that the British got. And that's where I got it. It was copies that were sent out before a lot of it got edited out. There's machine gun fire. There's a grenade exploding. I've got two pictures showing well, let me just begin at the top. What we have now, and what we're putting in Waco, too, the ATF came out with 7 different stories about how 3 of their 4 agents were killed. They originally gave a detailed report to the Dallas Morning News showing how 4 agents had gone up the ladder, 3 had gone in the window, and that those guys were killed when they went in the room by gunfire from the Branch Davidians. That's
correct, and the president himself identified those 3 as having been his personal bodyguards during his election campaign.
That's right. But now keep in mind, the ATF itself claims that those 3 men were the ones that went in the window and were killed.
That's correct.
As soon as my tape came out, they started backpedaling furiously.
In fact, they claimed that the people who went in the window at that point were not killed at all. Isn't that correct?
They weren't killed. They got back out the window, and they're just peachy fine. And then in the final official investigation report, they claim that it was a team. You know, if you watch the tape, you can see 2 teams of agents going up ladders, one on the right, one on the left. The team that goes up the right is the team that goes in the front window. In the ATF report, they claim that the team that went up the left was really going to go up the left when they got to the top of the roof, cross over to the right, and go in a window on the same wall, and that they had 3 guys going in that you couldn't see, and that they were going in a different window on the same wall.
Well, they may have, because...
stupid.
Do you have any tape that shows where those guys went?
Yes, and one of them fell off the roof in the front of the house.
I'll tell you, looking at that tape, folks, it doesn't look like any kind of a planned raid by anybody who knew what they were doing. In fact, it looks like an episode right out of the old Keystone Cops.
What's really, really interesting is this final ATF report talking about the injuries. Remember how they said they had 4 dead agents and 16 injured agents?
That's correct.
Guess what they count as injuries? One person chipped a tooth. One person twisted his ankle running away.
Well, technically, that's all correct. Those are injuries. Although, when I was in Vietnam, B-40 rocket went off in close proximity to my boat on the sandbar, and I got shrapnel in my back, which I never reported, so I never got a Purple Heart and never wanted one. I thought that getting a medal for being injured was ludicrous. It wasn't a sign of anything that you did that was competent. It was a sign of either incompetence or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And while you can always say you gave your all for your country, I just didn't go for that. And I question people who would report that they sprained their ankle and something like that. But there are technically injuries. What I want to get into, if you don't mind, is this upcoming trial on January the 10th, and I think all this hoopla and this attempt to discredit you and divert the public's attention away from that trial and toward you is really what this is all about. And, of course, if they can discredit you, then they can do whatever they want to with those people. Now, the trial is going to be actually, in fact, a secret trial, is it not?
Yes, it's supposed to begin on January the 10th. That'll be the day they begin picking the jury. But it's going to be the same judge as that was in Waco. They only have one judge in Waco, and he handpicked the magistrate, Dennis Green, that signed that bogus search warrant.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit here, because I want to make sure that everybody out there understands what's going on. You're a lawyer. You're supposed to know the law. Is that correct?
That's right.
Isn't it true that secret trials are against the law in the United States of America?
Yes, that was one of the points that the Star Chambers in England were just absolutely abhorrent to the founding fathers. That was why the original Bill of Rights, which by the way, those 10 amendments, the first 10 amendments to our Constitution, they're not amendments at all. They were passed with the original Constitution. They were a condition of passing the original Constitution.
That's right.
They are not amendments. They are part and parcel of the Constitution. Every one of those Bill of Rights addresses a vital right that each of us have. And the fourth, let's see, what could possibly be left out? The fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh amendments or articles deal with your trial rights, your rights of due process, your rights to a fair and impartial hearing in front of a jury of your peers, your right to counsel, public hearing. Well, it's not going to be very public because the judge has already put a gag order on all of the attorneys. He's already said no press. He's already said that he's going to pick the jury, and he's already said that the jurors are going to be anonymous.
Are spectators going to be allowed, Linda?
Well, I would imagine they're going to allow them in with numbering systems. That's what the indications are right now, but that means it's going to be the same little pet press that was down there to begin with.
Well, the judge has said no press, so press can't be there.
Well, that's no live press. They'll be able to write about it. That they won't be able to film it, they won't be able to show it.
Mm-hmm. And there'll be the same press that lied about what was going on February the 28th and during the 51-day siege.
Yeah, and I want to bring up the point of a movie, and the reason I want to do that is it's a movie that won an award. It's called Panama Deception. It's available at Blockbuster Video, and it shows what happened in Panama and just how bad we were lied to by the media. And it also has one very telling point in it. It lists the media that were taken to Panama by the Pentagon. The Pentagon flew the media down to Panama. These are the government lackeys that they could guarantee to lie to the American public, because that's exactly what they did. They lied to us, because when you see this movie and you see this footage, this is real film footage in that movie. I didn't make it. I didn't have anything to do with it. But it was absolutely one of the most shocking films I've ever seen. It shows entire families were run over by tanks by our military in their cars. these whole families, men, women, and children, unarmed civilians. They dug mass graves, 5 mass graves to throw these people in. And this bunch of media, these dogs that the Pentagon took down there, were telling us lies. Well, it reads like a who's who of the media that was in Waco. And this should give you a clue about who is doing what.
And they're all members of the secret societies. We've already checked with most of them, not every one, but most of them we have checked. They are members of the secret societies. Now, including Freemasonry, for all you scumbags out there who think that your Freemasonic Lodge is such an honorable place to be, you are fools, I can guarantee you, and I can prove that statement anywhere. Linda, let's get back to Waco. The trial is on the 10th of January, is that correct?
Anyone that's aware of the Fully Informed Jury Association, Fully Informed Jury is under a lot of heat right now. They're being attacked in California by judges. The federal judges are getting together. They've reported anyone that is helping with Fully Informed Jury to the FBI and claiming that it's jury tampering.
Isn't it true that 98% of all federal judges are Freemasons?
Well, I don't know that, but I would take your word for it for sure.
Well, it's true. we have already made that affirmation.
It would seem that would be the case just from the ones that I do know of, but I don't know 98% of them. So, but the Fully Informed Jury people, what they're trying to do around the country is educate jurors to their rights. A jury has an absolute right to acquit. It only takes one guy who absolutely refuses to do anything other than what his conscience tells him is the right thing to do, to prevent a person from being railroaded and shanghaied by these New World Order people.
Well, most of the sheeple don't know that they can do that, and they choose sheeple to sit on juries, and they're told what they can and can't do by the judge, and they think that that's what they have to listen to, and in fact, that's not true at all, is it?
It absolutely is not true, but I'll tell you this, as an attorney, and I want you to know in Indiana, we have, in our Constitution in the state of Indiana, it says very plainly, the jury has the right to judge both the facts and the law.
And that was the original intent of our founding fathers when they made our judicial decisions subject to a jury's ruling if the value of the act was over $20.
And but when they say judge the law, that means you have the right to decide, even if the person may have broken the law under the specific wording of the law, if the facts are wrong or if the spirit of the law dictates that this person should not be found guilty in this case, or if you just think the law is a bad law, you as a juror have an absolute right to refuse to find that person guilty.
That's correct.
But what judges are doing, and even in my own state of Indiana, and this just occurred 2 weeks ago, we have judges telling jurors, no, you have to vote the law the way, you have to listen to what the law is the way I tell it to you. You do not have the right to disregard the law. You do not have the right to acquit the person if you find that they committed the offense as described. And when I try to tell them, no, our Constitution says you have an absolute right to disregard the law if you choose to, I am cited and told that if I don't shut up, I'll be in contempt of court. This is what they're doing.
That's how these secret societies infiltrate every single area of our society, our government, our military, our legal system, and control it from within.
And I actually had a judge tell me, and I never believed people that told me this before until it finally happened to me 2 weeks ago. A judge said to me, the Constitution has no place in this court, and you're not going to discuss it.
Well, technically, they're right. I've educated my listening audience on this many, many times. When Harry Truman signed the United Nations Treaty and pushed through Congress the UN Participation Act, the executive branch of the United States government interpreted the law to mean that under Article 6 of the Constitution, the United Nations Charter supersedes the Constitution of the United States of America. And in fact, when any judge is considering a ruling on a constitutional question, he must have in front of him a copy of the United States Constitution and a copy of the United Nations Charter and the resolutions which apply. Were you aware of that, Linda?
No, I certainly wasn't.
Well, that's a fact.
I didn't know about the UN Charter. One of the things I did know was about the Federal Emergency Management Act putting the federal judiciary under the executive branch and directly under executive branch control, and I see the effects of that day in and day out in court. We've got judges who are nothing but government lackeys. They have no intentions of attempting to be impartial or to meet justice. All they're interested in is slam dunks, get the calendar cleared, let me out of here, I'll go play golf. And I'm very disgusted with the entire system to such an extent that I am not going to practice law anymore.
You know, I have a steady listener who constantly writes me letters, and he lives down in Texas, who has made the connection between these people and golf, and what he wants to do is go shoot all golfers.
Well,
I told him to hold off and don't go doing anything like that. But
this trial in Waco promises to be a total rigged deal. Mark England, you might remember, he's the reporter at the Waco Tribune-Herald.
You know, Linda, I hate to do this, but we're running out of time. I need you to wrap it up in about 30 or 40 seconds if you can.
Oh, quick, can I tell about the music video?
Yeah, real quick.
All right, we've got a music video. It's just devastating. This is something that even the left-leaning liberal media, the dumbest people, the biggest sheeple, any idiot can see this video, and their eyes will be opened. I'm not kidding you. It's a music video. The number to get it is 1-800-749-9939. 1-800-749-9939. We just finished it today. It is devastating. Waco 2 will be done in about 2 weeks. We've got the footage that I talked about here earlier is in it. There's a lot more than that, and we're going to absolutely prove that the government's version that they've come out with now on this terrible tragedy of the gym collapsing in the McNulty tape is a lie.
Well, we know that McNulty's lying. We know that everybody else who has attacked you and tried to besmirch your character. You see, when the enemy can't deal with the facts, they always try to destroy the character of the person who is threatening them.
Well, if the court jester brings you the truth, it is still the truth, and who are you going to believe?
That's right.
Their own eyes or their lying mouth? You know, to me, if I can see it in front of my eyes on tape that has not been digitized like McNulty's was, on videotape that's just straight, what you see is what you get. When I can see them murdering people using flamethrowing tanks, snipers, and the whole 9 yards, I don't need to hear the government's explanation. What I want to see is every one of those guys on trial for murder and treason. And I don't mean the Branch Davidians. I mean Bill Clinton, Janet Reno, Jeff Jamar, Bob Ricks, Stephen Higgins, Blake Benson.
I got to interrupt here, Linda. I want to thank you once again for being an excellent guest and for all the work that you're doing.
Oh, Bill, thank you.
You as one lonely individual are putting all those people to shame out there who keep giving me that excuse. There's nothing I can do. I'm just one lonely little individual. Or I'm a woman. I can't do anything. I want to thank you. You are truly a real patriot. You put a lot of these idiots out there, including this guy that wrote me this thing tonight, G. Drysdale, to shame. They're sitting out there.
I want to ask the men, what are you going to do about this kangaroo trial in Waco?
Well, that's my next question, folks. Are you going to allow this to happen, or are you going to continue to be sheeple? As you allowed all those people to be murdered, are you going to allow the survivors to be destroyed by this society and locked up in jail or sentenced to death? What are you going to do, sheeple? Don't ever criticize me for calling you what you are. You are stupid, ignorant, and apathetic, the majority of you. Some of you are smart, intelligent people and are helping in this battle. And God bless you. And whether you believe it or not, good night, and God bless you all. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
And I'm Carolyn Nelson.
The regularly scheduled program that was to be aired tonight, a rerun of Mystery Babylon number 29, will not be heard tonight, for we are bringing you a special presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, and I suggest you get pen and paper by your side, as usual. Remember, you dare not listen to the hour of the time ever without a pad of paper and a pencil or pen. Ladies and gentlemen, I made a prediction last year that 1994 would be the year that they take the guns away from the American people, and it appears that once again I will be right. On December the 29th, USA Today, a newspaper owned by Gannett Company, Incorporated, published an issue, the first time in my entire life I have ever seen an entire newspaper devoted to one subject: guns in America. Death by guns in America. Children killed by guns in America. The following day, December the 30th, CNN's entire programming for the day was devoted to anti-gun propaganda. Tonight, on CNN, they ran a special report on the highlights of the year 1993. And guess what? Apparently nothing good happened in 1993. Everything was gun-oriented. Wars, murders, violence. Nothing, not one single thing good that happened was presented to the public. And every conflict in the world was blamed upon religion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a critical year. We must be on our guard. We must succeed in waking the sheeple. And we must weed out the traitors from our institutions, our city governments, our county governments, our police departments, our national government, the military. We must succeed in routing out the secret societies from every one of our communities. We must reduce the Masonic lodges to rubble. We must do this, or we will be slaves in the New World Order. And anyone who is not of what they call the new sixth root race of Germanic and Anglo heritage, you will be exterminated. They've made no secret of this, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight in the special presentation on CNN, in their coverage of the Waco massacre, they made the statement that David Koresh declared that he was the Messiah, resulting in the deaths of over 86 men, women, and children, and 4 government agents in the apocalypse that followed. Stay tuned. We have a very special guest with a very special message. Don't go away. I'll be right back. The massacre in Waco, Texas, for those of us who understand its meaning, has cut deep into the quick of the American consciousness, those of us who are still Americans. There is a campaign now to direct attention away from the trial, which begins on January the 10th, of the surviving Branch Davidians who have been charged with conspiracy to murder federal officers, by discrediting you and the tremendous work that you've done to try to bring the attention of the sheeple to what's really happening. Fill us in, Linda.
Well, I'm seeing an attack. It's an orchestrated attack from almost invariably has its roots in the same source, Bo Grites and people affiliated with Bo Grites, for no apparently good reason other than to cause confusion and to try to provide the government with an excuse to explain how these children were killed in Waco. one of the things that was very important in my first tape, and I didn't realize how important it was at the time, was the scene that shows the underground bunker smoking. I got more reaction from the government operatives, and now I know who a lot of them are, as do your listeners, but they began immediately to attack me on that point, this underground bunker smoking, and the part where the narrator says, and many people lost their lives there. Well, I found out why this particular point was so sensitive with them, because they had put out disinformation claiming that when the inspectors checked in the underground bunker, the air was fresh and clean, and that there were only 6 bodies in there, and they were all people that had been killed the first day.
Why would anyone believe them when everything they said from day one on February the 28th all the way through the 51 days was a lie?
There's a lot of people that have believed the story from day one, and they still believe the government's version, despite the fact that even in the published accounts, you can see lie after lie after lie. They contradicted themselves day after day after day. But this one particular point turned out to be very important, because it happened that many of the children were in the underground bunker. You remember after the fire that the news media kept talking about there was one building still standing. It was a concrete building, and they made a big to-do saying, oh, the firemen and the marshals and the ATF and the FBI were afraid to go in there. That was where all the ammunition was, and it might blow up, and that there were, when they did go in, there were hundreds of rounds of ammunition up to their knees and all this kind of malarkey. And they kept calling it a bunker. It was an above-ground concrete structure. They kept saying there's ammunition in the bunker. Well, first of all, that's not a bunker. It used to be, when the Branch Davidians' house was still standing, it was a meat locker. It was a cold storage meat locker, a walk-in cooler, inside what used to be a well house. Second of all, we've got film footage, and you could see some of that in our first tape, Waco, the Big Lie. Immediately after the fire, there's FBI agents walking around in the ruins as they're still smoking at 5 o'clock that evening. They walk right in that concrete structure. There's no fear whatsoever of any exploding anything, no fear of any bullets, nothing. This was not the bunker. They also said they found many children with their mothers in the bunker. And the news media led us to believe they were talking about this above-ground concrete structure. And that was an intentional deception. What they didn't want any of us to find out was when the coroner said that a lot of the children were found in the bunker, he meant the bunker, the real one, the one underground, the tunnel, the one that's shown in my videotape, smoking early in the morning. Now, we did have the time wrong. I thought it was 6 in the morning, but we finally got footage and documented the precise time was 10 minutes to 9, and the time that the tank hit the front end of the building and collapsed it onto the trap door was right after that, within 2 minutes. So anyone that was in that underground bunker was trapped underground immediately. They were gassed under there. Agents kept getting in and out of their tanks, shooting gas, They had portable flamethrowers. We found pictures of agents with portable flame-throwing backpacks, and they were in and out of these tanks. You can see the smoke coming out of that underground bunker. And afterwards, as the place is burning down, if you watch the film footage, you can see tanks rolling back and forth across this one particular spot. And what they were doing was collapsing the underground bunker in on top of these people. The coroner from Tarrant County, his name was Rodney Crow, went on the Maury Povich show, and to his great credit, finally spoke the truth. He blasted the media that said the children, when he had reported that the children died of blunt trauma, the media had said the Branch Davidians beat their children to death. He blasted them and said that was an outright lie, that when he had said they died from blunt force trauma, they died when the concrete crushed in on them and killed them. The tanks rolled over those children, crushed the concrete in, and killed them. And that's what the government didn't want any of us to know, and that was what they were covering up when they buried the whole place.
I remember the coroner making that statement on the Maury Povich show, and he did say exactly what you have just related.
This is why the McNulty tape, the one we talked about earlier tonight, was put out. They put that out before people made the connection. But because of my tape, because of the scene that shows that bunker flaming and smoking underground, they didn't want people to figure out. You'll notice that all during the siege, they never mentioned the underground bunkers. They kept talking about the concrete structure above ground and calling it a bunker. They kept directing everyone's attention away from it. I found out that most people did not know the bunkers were underground out in the yard, that people in there would have been safe.
Most people still don't know unless they've seen your video.
And that's what the government, they freaked out about that. They literally did. They had spasms about that part of my tape, and I didn't know why until I heard that coroner speak out, and what he basically confirmed was that I was right, that all those people had been in the bunker, were killed in the bunker. They were crushed by concrete, mothers holding their babies. And the McNulty tape came out to give the government an alternative excuse. The whole tape is a fabrication to try to claim that the gymnasium collapsed and crushed these children.
And in fact, it did not.
You know, and first of all, the gymnasium didn't collapse. Second of all, well, one part of it did, a roof part did, but it wasn't enough to kill anybody. It fell.
Well, the truth is it just drooped, really.
It drooped.
Yeah.
The whole gymnasium is still standing long into the fire. It's one of the last things to catch on fire. And we have plenty of film footage to prove that. He has these photographs that he calls forward-looking radar pictures. They aren't forward-looking radar at all. They're handheld thermal imaging pictures. And he's put a time on them at 11:59, which would be before the fire, claiming that the gymnasium collapsed before the fire. But if you look at those pictures, there are at least 6 buildings completely obliterated. They're missing in the picture. They're gone. That picture could only have been taken after the propane tank exploded and blew them up.
Now, McNulty has been lying to the public, in fact. He has claimed that he is a professional investigator. In fact, he's an insurance salesman, isn't he?
That's right. And then this number that he gives out for his organization, it turns out it's like one of those sex phone lines. It's a 900 number that if you call that number, you're going to be paying $4 a minute for it.
And when he made this tape, the tape is a fabrication, ladies and gentlemen. It has been falsified and heavily tampered with and manipulated, and he sent out press release about this tape discrediting or attempting to discredit Linda Thompson. And I tell you, the truth always wins out. He will not succeed, for it is he who will be discredited ultimately. You mark my word. And it begins tonight, ladies and gentlemen. His organization, in fact, does not really exist. He misrepresented himself to the press by sending out on a letterhead a misleading letterhead, making the press believe that he was a representative of the government of California under the title of California Organization for Public Safety. And there's a picture of the Capitol building in his letterhead. He made the tape available only to the media, because the media, of course, will jump at the chance to discredit Linda Thompson, will not analyze the tape, and so far I have not seen the media, this tape, presented on any television media, but I have heard talk show radio host after talk show radio host parrot this phony professional investigator, who's really an insurance salesman, representing an agency of the state of California which does not exist, giving out a telephone number, which is a 900 number, which you're charged for if you call, who has totally created a manipulated, phony tape to attempt to divert your attention away from the upcoming trial on January the 10th. You see, if they can succeed in discrediting Linda Thompson, they can do whatever they want to the surviving Branch Davidians. Just as they could succeed in murdering the entire congregation of that church just by making David Koresh appear to be politically incorrect. Is this right, Linda?
That's absolutely right. And one of the reasons I've been away for a while and not talking out publicly a lot on the last couple of weeks, I've been working on two tapes. One is Waco 2, and we can't get it done before the trial. The studio time has just absolutely killed us because of the holidays. So we decided to make the music video and get it done because we could get it done quickly, and it will tear your heart out. But it has two crucial pieces of information in it that the government did not want to come out before the trial, that has not come out yet. And when people see, I want people to do what they did with the first tape. Get it out everywhere. Get it out quick. Get it out before the trial, especially if you're in Texas. Try to make sure it gets in the hands of every one of your neighbors in case they might be on that jury. But keep in mind, in this case, the judge is going to pick the jury. He's put a gag order on the attorneys. He's decided that the jury is going to be anonymous. They've moved the trial out of Waco to San Antonio, but they kept the same judge, the judge that picked the magistrate that signed the original search warrant, the judge that held secret arraignments of these Branch Davidians, the same judge that kept witnesses in solitary confinement in Waco. This judge has no scruples, no concept of the Constitution, has no intentions of doing anything but whatever the government has told him to do.
You talking about Green?
No, Judge Smith.
Judge Smith?
Green is the magistrate Walter Smith picked Green.
Green is the magistrate that signed the warrant.
Right, and Walter Smith, the federal judges get to pick their own magistrates. They're not even appointed or voted or anything. They're hand-picked by the judge, and the judge is hand-picked by the governor. They also are not voted in. They are federally appointed. And, in this case, Ann Richards is the governor of Texas, and she's the one who didn't know enough about the Constitution to know that she could order those federal agents out of Texas anytime she wanted to. In reply to letters to her, she responded that she had no control over it. It was in the hands of the federal government.
Well, she would like everybody to believe that, but I happen to know that Ann Richards is an old-time, very astute politician, and she knows exactly what she can do and what she can't. She uses it as an excuse. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, and she's not ignorant to begin with. I can assure you of that. But the sheeple will believe whatever she says.
Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't seem like you've got sheeple for listeners, Bill, because this evening the service that was handling our calls for the tape called me to tell me that not one single person wanted to use a credit card. Isn't that marvelous?
Yes, it is.
It is marvelous. I was so thrilled to hear that. It was just marvelous. There were people that even screamed at them about credit cards, and didn't they want to know how bad they were and why you shouldn't use them. And it was wonderful. It was truly wonderful. Not a single call wanted to use a credit card.
Yeah. Whenever anybody uses credit or takes out a loan on anything, they are contributing to the destruction of the United States of America.
Well, I thought that was a very, very telling point about how successful you've been in educating people and how well informed the people that listen to your show are. That's never happened before.
Well, stick around, especially in this time slot. The earlier time slot is a new audience for the hour of the time, but this time slot is the audience that's been with me since the beginning, and there are not many sheeple in this audience in this time slot. In the earlier time, at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 8 p.m. your time, most of the audience at the present time, unfortunately, are sheeple.
Well, I was really thrilled to hear that. I was thrilled to hear it, and it just shows that, yes, we are making progress. One person like you who's courageous and gets out there and tells it like it is and tells the truth and gets it out to the people does make a difference. And I'm glad you do.
Well, thank you, Linda, and I'm certainly glad that you do what you do. And I try to make all these people who always come up with this excuse that I'm just one little human being, or what can I do? I can't do anything. Well, so am I, and so are you, and so is anybody else who's ever made a difference. Jesus Christ was just one lonely, helpless human being who overcame more than most people will ever have to overcome in their life.
I'll tell you, in this battle, we're not unarmed. As soon as you realize who the real power on this planet is, who the real power is, and you turn your trust and faith to that power, you have the same power. We all do. We have the power behind us to beat this thing, to beat these people. They're evil, they're corrupt, but they're stupid, and they're deceitful, and they trip over their own lies, and they trip over their own deceit. And they're like any other bully. They're chickens.
That's right. You smack them in the mouth as hard as you can, and they turn tail and run.
The most telling part of that was when they were harassing us with those helicopters early into this thing. And I came on your show, and I went on a couple of other shows, and I said, if those unmarked black helicopters fly over my house again at 50 feet and endanger my children and my property, I'm going to shoot them down.
Yes, I remember that.
Well, they quit.
Good.
Started flying over the office, but they haven't come over my house again.
Good.
So, that to me was very telling. And the second encounter I had like that was when they came down close to me in my car, and there was a guy in the back of the helicopter with a rifle out. I said, well, I figured if he was going to shoot me, I got my gun out, I figured he could go too. And they took off. They flew up. Now, that tells you two things. Number one, they were not acting legally, because if they were, they would have arrested me or shot me. Two, they're easily intimidated. They aren't used to having people stand up to them.
They've never had anybody stand up to them.
And I'm getting tired of hearing, we've got a BBS like you do, and we answer people's responses and mail and so forth, and we've been discussing some of the laws. Well, one issue came up the other day, and this is maybe a bad example, but maybe not. A fellow who did have a prior felony record had a gun in his car. He was driving down the road. He had a tail light out, and he got pulled over by the police because he had his tail light out, so it was a traffic violation. He hadn't done anything. He hadn't injured anybody. He had committed no crimes. But the policeman was able to run his information and found out he had a prior felony conviction and saw that he had the gun laying there in the open in the seat, which was perfectly legal if he weren't a felon. They arrested him and put him in jail. And immediately, people started screaming, oh, it's a felon with a gun. You shouldn't give him any bail at all. Now, this man hadn't used his gun. He hadn't hurt anybody. He had a job. He's a law-abiding citizen at this point. He's paid his debt to society. He's done nothing wrong. But merely because he possessed a gun, we've got idiots who are responding just like the crowd did in Nazi Germany. Well, it's against the law. Put him in jail. Keep him there. Throw away the keys.
Yeah, not only that, but it's not really against the law. The law says that you cannot take the citizenship away from an American citizen. Only you can renounce your citizenship. Nobody else can take it away, no matter what you do or anything. And the second article in the amendment does not make any distinguishing exceptions or anything. It says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Period.
Well, it amazes me. What amazed me was two things. One, that people don't stop and think how stupid, if that is a valid law, what a stupid law it is. And who passed it? How did we let a law like that get passed? And now look at this new crime bill. The crime bill is the same kind of law, only it's applied to all the rest of us. It says it's going to be illegal to merely possess particular types of guns. It doesn't, you don't have to harm anybody, you don't have to shoot anybody, you don't have ever had to have done a thing except own it. That is the exact same kind of law, and we're going to get the same kind of response. We're going to have these good little Nazis out there saying, well, you're a criminal, you own a gun. And nodding their heads like sheeple. Sheeple is not a strong enough word for these, because they don't think. They just simply...
You ought to see the letters I get for calling people sheeple and say that it's not a strong enough word.
It's not a strong enough word. People, you're giving your liberties away. Just because a law has been passed, does it make it right? Is it constitutional? Is it moral? No. And where do we stop this? You can't say you can do it through voting and through elections, because at this point, if there's anybody out there naive enough to believe that the elections are not rigged.
Well, Linda, I have one stance on this, and that stance is constitutional. All these other arguments to me are bullshit. There is no argument. There is no reason. There is no discussion. If you want to take guns away from the American people, there's only one way to do it. You're going to have to change the Constitution. Until the Constitution is changed, no weapons are illegal in this country. The Constitution says clearly the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Don't get caught up in these other arguments. Anybody, don't even start discussing any other argument but that one. That is the only one that applies.
And the reason that also applies is that the Congress does not have the right to pass laws giving the federal government jurisdiction over crimes. Even if it were legal to legislate anything about guns, federal criminal laws themselves are unconstitutional, because the federal government only has jurisdiction in its territories. That means in Washington, D.C.
That's correct. If you're not standing on federal property when you commit a crime, any kind of a crime, the federal government has no jurisdiction. Their laws do not apply. Their agents have no authority and no jurisdiction. The jurisdiction comes under the state.
And how they have been getting around that is claiming that crime affects interstate commerce, so that the Congress can pass laws about interstate commerce, therefore they can pass laws about crime.
The only thing that they can do with interstate commerce is regulate it, period.
And that is where we have absolutely let them take our liberty away from us.
And that's the key. You said it right there, and that's what I've been telling the world. We would not be in the predicament that we're in now if people were not apathetic, ignorant, and stupid. Most people don't even own a copy of the Constitution. Most people, in fact, have never read it in their entire life unless they were forced to read it in school, and then they had other things on their mind and didn't even pay any attention to what it was they read, if they even read it in the first place.
They're not teaching the Constitution in school anymore.
That's correct.
Absolutely not teaching it. And you can mention amendments to people. They don't even know what they are. They don't have the first concept of what the Bill of Rights is.
Thank you, Linda. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Whether we like it or not, dear listeners, great change is coming. The world is in a state of great change. There's nothing we can ever do to stop change, but we can direct the change for the better or for the worse. Or we can remain stupid, ignorant, and apathetic and let those who are in control direct it where they wish. Linda has done an awful lot to educate you, to help try and save the Constitution, the penultimate of human achievement, the first time in history when this country was created that man or woman ever existed on this earth free. And she is under attack by people who set out to destroy her with no other reason than to destroy her and to direct your attention away from the coming trial beginning on January the 10th, which in effect is a secret trial. The press has been barred. The jury will be selected by the judge, and the identity of the jury will be kept secret, which means we will not even really know if there really is a jury. The attorneys and the prosecution have been gagged. Not too long ago, if we heard that scenario, we would have condemned the Soviet Union. Do you remember? Well, I do. Linda, tell us what's going to happen with this trial. How many people are involved?
There's 12 branch Davidians on trial. Now, they're all charged with conspiracy to commit murder or murder of federal agents. This, if anyone who saw the first Waco tape knew that there was way more there than met the eye in terms of who was shooting first. since the first Waco tape came out. The 911 tapes have been released, which, by the way, we also have. We have all 48 of them. There are 48 tapes, but the first 7 are the ones most people are interested in because that was the original call. But just the fact that the Branch Davidians called 911 when they were attacked should tell everyone that these people were not prepared for an attack. They weren't waiting for anybody. They reacted like a lot of us would. If someone broke in your front door and started shooting at you, you'd call the police.
Not only that, but conspiracy, for it to be a real conspiracy, means that 2 or more Branch Davidians had to meet in secret to plan that attack to kill those officers. Is that correct?
Well, they wouldn't have to meet in secret, and anymore the federal standards on conspiracy are so pitiful, it can mean nothing more than an instantaneous agreement. Well, then the definition has certainly changed since the last time I looked it up in the law. Most of the federal laws have gone that way. They've stretched the outer limits to the point of ridiculous in terms of what a law actually says versus what they say it means. But it still would have meant that they would have had to meet 2 or more of them, whether in secret or not, according to your revelation here, and they would have had to plan that attack in order to kill those federal officers. Is that correct? And formerly, they would have also had to have taken at least one step towards that plan before it could be called a conspiracy. But now it takes nothing more than for them to simply allege that they had some kind of plan instantly beforehand. For instance, if you could make that allegation about anyone, you mean if somebody attacked my home, and I grabbed a gun and said, "That man is killing my family, I'm going to shoot him," I would be guilty of conspiracy to murder a federal officer? If you said it to another person and you both agreed that you were going to defend, yes. Well, hell, they might as well try me now, because if they ever attack my house and shoot bullets into my home, threatening my family, I will kill just as many of them as I can. Well, that's the scenario So I'm telling it to the whole world, so I guess that makes me guilty of conspiracy to murder federal officers. Well, probably guilty of uttering threats against a federal officer. No, this is no threat. I'm telling the world that if they attack me with weapons shooting into my home, I will defend my family and my home, and I will kill them. That's no threat against federal officers. That is my right under the law to defend myself. And that's what the Branch Davidians did eventually do, but initially they were fired on by helicopters overhead that fired into the roof, killed women and children, which several of the Branch Davidians have told me in interviews I've conducted with them, and which Dick DeGuerin, the attorney down there, confirmed when he said he saw the room and the ceilings that looked like Swiss cheese in the second story. So it wasn't any Branch Davidian shooting out the ceiling on the second story. It was the helicopter overhead. I also have film footage showing bullet holes in vehicles, and those bullet holes were made from straight overhead. They could not have been shot from the building because of the angle of the bullet hole. This proves that helicopter not only fired down on the Branch Davidians, but it fired down on the ATF too. And it was firing into the roof where the first 3 agents had gone into the building. So the helicopter may well have fired on them, as well as their own man at that window that you saw in the first tape. Since that time, we have come across more footage that shows an agent down on the ground who threw in 2 grenades and fired into the chapel twice. The ATF, when they tried to tell their new version of the story about how 3 of their agents got killed, changed the story and claimed that one of them was killed in the chapel. Well, that doesn't help them when they've got one of their own men standing at the chapel window throwing in 2 grenades and shooting in there, and there is no question about it in this particular piece of film, because you can very plainly see him throw the grenade. You can see the grenade. You can see him shoot in there without question. And we also have footage showing 2 agents out in the yard shooting. They're in front of the water tanks, and they're shooting back out at the reporters and their own people. They're not shooting at the house. They're shooting at their own people. We have a photograph that shows what appears to be a child out front of the house at the gate when the agents first arrived. The front door is standing open, just like David Koresh said. He said he went to the front door, he opened the door, and he said, "Wait a minute, there's women and children in here, let's talk." and he said the agents started firing on him. This picture shows that the front door was standing open. There is not a single person at any of those windows shooting at the agents, and the agents are standing there blasting away, and there's a little child in the picture. But whoever took this picture, and it was the guy with the Waco Tribune-Herald that took the picture, we got a copy of the negative, and that negative had already been tampered with. They blurred the child's face. You can see it. It's a very poorly done job. It's clearly been altered. We could not have done it because we were not the source of that negative. And they did it apparently so you couldn't tell who the kid was, but we have figured out who the child was because there were only 2 blonde kids of that age there.
And what happened to this child?
He was killed. We have also found footage that shows 2 ATF agents carrying someone very small to an ambulance. They never told this to the world, did they? Just like they never told the world that they killed Sammy Weaver. They went into straight to a cover-up, straight to a cover-up, straight to a lie, just like they did in Idaho. They did the same thing in Waco. They killed children and covered it up.
Were you aware that the Treasury Department comes under the International Monetary Fund and is really not an agency of the United States government?
Yes, and I just saw an excellent letter from Richard Palmquist out in California, who is another person who's working very hard in this, where he had a 501c3 corporation, which he dissolved and sent a letter to the Treasury Department accusing them of perpetuating a fraud on the American public, and the entire fraud being exposed in this letter that he wrote. It was just an excellent letter. I wish I could write as well as he does. But that letter, if I could get a copy of it out to everybody in America, I would, because it explains how the Treasury Department is not even using Department of the Treasury any longer. It's not the United States Department of Treasury.
And it's not the United States Treasury, which is the true agency of the United States government.
It's just simply Treasury Department.
That's right.
And the secretary, who is the head of the Treasury Department, is one of the directors on the International Monetary Fund. He receives pay for that position, and that's absolutely forbidden and illegal under our Constitution, which says that no officials should receive any emolument or payment from a foreign entity.
But it is a requirement of the Treaty of Bretton Woods that the Secretary of the Treasury be paid by the International Monetary Fund and not by the government of the United States of America. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is a tax collecting and enforcing agency which comes under the Department of the Treasury, or the Treasury Department. And because of that, it also is an arm of the International Monetary Fund, which is an arm of the United Nations. They do not have any requirement in their oath to swear any allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America. Were you aware of that?
Yes, because we went to look for the oath one day in the federal law books on that very point, because we wanted to prove that they had to swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. They did used to have to swear that oath. That whole section of the law has been replaced and says they will swear an oath as directed by the director.
That's right. And also the United States Marshal Service no longer swears allegiance to the Constitution either.
Oath. It's the same law covers them both, and there's no copy of the oath in the law books anymore. It simply says as directed.
That's right. The United States of America is slowly and surely being dissolved and being attached to the United Nations. This began many, many years ago with the signing of the United Nations Treaty by Harry Truman, a 33rd degree Freemason, and the pushing through Congress of the UN Participation Act. The federal government's executive branch interpreted Article 6 of the Constitution as treaties supersede the Constitution. And they established the National Security Act, the Central Intelligence Agency, and they have been working to dissolve the sovereignty of all nations of the world and bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government with the full cooperation of all those belonging to the secret societies within our government, without our government, in the military, in the Congress, in the states, and even in the cities.
It's treason.
Well, it's absolutely treason, so when are we going to do something about it?
Linda, could I ask you also, could Mr. Palmquist's letter be included in your video by any chance?
Well, we certainly could, and I'll tell you another thing. If I could, I'd like to give out my address, since everybody that called wanted to their great credit, did not want to use credit cards, did want to order the tape, and did need our address. Could I give that out?
Sure.
Okay, it's American Justice Federation, 3850 South Emerson Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46203. It's American Justice Federation, 3850 South Emerson, EMERSON Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46203. Now, I can include that letter. Yes, I sure could. It's a wonderful letter. And anyone out there who is a member of a church that has still got a 501c3 tax-exempt status, you tell them that they have put their church under the government's direction. They are serving the government, not God. They have a contract with the government to serve the government, and they should immediately dissolve that 501c3 status. And if I hear another preacher ask me, well, what do we do about our tax-exempt status? That is the point. Under our Constitution, the government does not have the right to regulate churches at all. You didn't need this status.
Nor do they have the right to levy a direct tax upon the people or an excise tax upon individuals or their incomes. And anytime you incorporate, whether it's a 501c3 or any kind of corporation, you have given up your sovereignty, you have given up your state citizenship, and you have become a part of the Federal District of Columbia. You are subject to the laws of the federal government. You have no constitutional rights, and you are a 14th Amendment citizen of the United States of America, which is a foreign government to the several states.
Well, we just dissolved our corporation, which was not 501c3, but nonetheless it had been a corporation, and we're taking steps to get ourselves individually out of this entire system, having discovered that it is a fraud, and it is corrupt. The main fraud is Social Security. One of the big frauds that everyone, the carrot and stick approach that the government is using to keep people in this fraudulent banking system. They claimed that Social Security was an insurance program. It was never an insurance program. They used the word insurance liberally throughout. But you ask for a guarantee in writing that you will ever be able to see any of your contributions back. You can't get that. They will not give it to you. They will not guarantee it. It is not insurance of any kind. It's a trick. It's a hoax. It's a lie. And you were given a Social Security number. What have they done with that? Do you remember they used to say they couldn't be used for identification? Now your Social Security number is used everywhere on everything by every government agency.
Not just the government. Go buy a battery at Radio Shack and see what happens. Well, Linda, I want to thank you for all your work, and I want to tell you, stand up tall during this attack upon your person and your character. You will prevail. To all my listeners, I want you to get the videotape, the musical that Linda has just completed, and in about 2 weeks she's going to come out with her second Waco tape. And if you can, this guy McNulty only makes his video available to the press so that the public cannot examine it. Any cursory examination of that tape will prove that it has been extremely manipulated, tampered with. It is a total fraud. McNulty himself is a fraud and a liar and a fake.
Here's the way you can tell it even with the naked eye. If you get footage and it's copied from any source, if he got a copy from the network like he claims, when you copy it, it's going to be worse quality than the first one, no matter what. Your footage is going to be slightly worse. And then he said he copied it onto digital tape. Well, that's another copy. It gets worse. Footage does not improve as it gets copied. It gets worse. But his still pictures are much clearer than his original footage right there. And he admits he digitized it. That proves it was digitized because you have to fill in the missing information, and that's exactly what he's done.
Not only that, but he screwed up and he's got sky underneath a building.
Now he's got a building parked where it doesn't belong, and it's
up in the sky, right?
Yeah, and the roof line goes in the wrong direction. And, there's a lot to it, but you can see it with the naked eye. It's easy to tell that he's done these things. And Bill, I tell you, if there's anybody getting the truth out to America, what I have discovered in a short amount of time is who the traitors are, and that's good. If nothing else, I can tell from the people who attack me and what they say and what they do. They're all trying to help the government by what they do. They're not trying to expose lies. They're not trying to expose what's really going on. And that in itself is a service to America because we know who the traitors are, no doubt about it. And right now, Bill, you're the strongest, loudest voice of truth in this country.
Well, thank you, Linda. That certainly is a wonderful endorsement, and from someone whom I respect as much as you.
Well, I know the hard way who the liars are, Bill. And at this point, I can say without question, I have never, ever found anything you said to be false. In fact, the opposite's true. I've been able to verify it. Things you warned me about, and I blew off a little months ago, I found them to be true.
Well, I remember you got a little irked at me for some of the things I warned you about, but I knew that you would ultimately find the truth, as the truth always prevails. I've always said that. I maintain it. And I stand behind that.
Well, if anybody out there thinks any of Bill's theories are off the wall, loony, nutso, whatever, let me just tell you right now, it's simply because you haven't got the information you need to know the truth, because he's right.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for being such a wonderful guest and giving us an update and clarifying some of these things that are floating around. Many people have called and asked what happened to you and what was going on and what is the truth about all these attacks upon your character. I want to wish you and your family a very happy New Year. Unfortunately, this year is not going to be happy if we don't succeed in waking the majority of the sheeple. To all of you listening, good night, and God bless you all.